Welcome back to Center Ring, folks. I'm your ringmaster, Sheepdog Smokey. You can see here we're going to jump right in. Alyssa Milano crashes and burns, mangles the truth in attempt to blast Trump over taxes. I suppose I would normally count it as a good April 15th when the liberal was complaining Republicans were too tax happy. Then again, when the liberal in question is Hollywood actress, noted tax expert Alyssa Milano, and the complaint, more an airing of grievances, really, was rather erroneous and or misleading, it wasn't exactly the watershed moment I was hoping for. Like Cher's recent moment of clarity. For those who haven't seen it, Cher, who not long ago was just vocal that everyone must take a dreamer into their home and protect them. But now that Donald Trump said, okay, fine, California, you like illegals, I'm sending them your way, she tweeted out that we need to take care of the Americans who are homeless in LA before sending illegals. Cher, welcome to the dark side. You're a Republican. Now that tax day is almost here and Americans are seeing for themselves who the Republican Party really cares about, Milano wrote in a tweet rant posted on April 14th, here are some things to remember ahead of tax day. Already this April, we've learned that tax refunds are down this year by $6 billion, Milano wrote. And this is actually a link to the tweet, so you can go and join the ratio. It is true, but it's extremely misleading because, of course, Miss Milano, who graduated at the bottom of her class of one at Who's the Boss High School, does not have the ability to understand economics or even do basic math. Lower refunds don't mean Americans paid more taxes, quite the opposite. Most workers paid less in taxes last year and saw higher take home pay week in, week out. But for many Americans, a slightly higher paycheck doesn't have quite the same visibility as a single $3,000 check in April or March. In other words, Milano's complaint, and the left's, is that they didn't pay as much in taxes and took home more, but didn't get the Pavlovian hit of a big refund check. This isn't an argument, it's willful ignorance. So, what else, Miss Milano? Well, whether you think you got a tax cut and whether you actually did is another issue entirely. Even the New York Times found that while 64.8% of Americans got a tax cut, only 39.6% thought they did. Furthermore, the trend of fewer people thinking they got a tax cut than actually did held true across all income groups, including those earning under $30,000. That's brought up because typically, if you don't earn $30,000, you pay almost nothing in taxes. And for those who are under 18 or working for less than, say, 15,000, you pay zero. You can't cut zero. And then, according to Milano, some entities got their taxes cut a little too much. I'm not actually going to read her tweets. I get a migraine every time I do. This is actually based on a report from the Partisan Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy. It includes some heavyweights in the list: Amazon, Delta Airlines, and Netflix. But some of what the report identifies as big companies might not fit your idea of big business. These include a publisher, Gannett, $7 million US income; retail and wholesale trade company Spartan Nash, $40 million in income; and industrial machinery company SPX, $66 billion in income. Those might be big numbers for an individual tax-paying American, but not exactly in league with, say, Apple, $59.53 billion. And again, we go to public perception. According to Real Clear Politics polling average, however, that's against 41% disapproval, which is about a 5-point spread. The gap has also gone up in recent weeks, in part because of overheated rhetoric like this, and it included an outlier poll from the really liberal public policy polling that showed the tax cuts were only popular with 25% of voters. A January-February poll from CNN, on the other hand, showed 49% of voters in favor of the tax cuts compared to 41% opposed. Just for those who can't do math, that means 10% either didn't understand the question or perhaps knew CNN would twist things and just said, no, I'm not going to talk to you. Furthermore, the tax cuts are invariably associated with President Donald Trump, and anything connected with Trump always polls worst. I'm convinced that even Trump-free ponies would poll well below 50%. To be fair, that whole subsidized pony thing hasn't been a winning campaign issue for Vermin Supreme so far. We'll see what Americans do when they get to the voting booth, however. When they do, they're going to be reminded that these are the tax cuts that gave them back more money in their paychecks and kept the economy strong. The facts on this beat the rhetoric and the misdirection, no matter how histrionic Alyssa Milano and her friends might get. Of course, if they want taxes even lower to put more money in American pockets, I'm sure we could work something out. Now, I'm going to explain this in a way that even a Hollywood elite liberal like Milano should be able to understand. The way taxes work, you declare your exemptions on your I-9. For example, I am single with no children, no dependents whatsoever. I have a maximum exemption of 1. Myself. I support myself. However, on my I-9, I claim 0. That throws me into a higher tax bracket. I'm seen as not needing as much each week because during the year they see that I'm not supporting anyone. So my taxes are taken out. At the end of the year, I claim single with 1 exemption, myself. That allows me to get a refund. Yes, I realize I am purposefully going against Dave Ramsey's teachings and belief that everyone should have to write a check every April so they know exactly what they're sending to the government. I just don't want to. But when the tax cut happened, I didn't look at it and say, great, I'm going to get a lot more money next year. My instant thought was, great, my paycheck's going to be a little bigger every 2 weeks. Because the tax cut is not a tax refund increase, it is a tax cut. Meaning, when I say single, none, and just using random numbers, let's say my salary was an even $100,000 a year. I wish. And let's say prior to the tax cut, the taxes taken out of my check every 2 weeks, claiming single none, were 35%. That would mean over the course of the year I would have $35,000 withheld from my paycheck. At the end of the year, when I claim single 1, I'm actually in a 30% tax bracket, so I would receive a refund of $5,000. Now, with the tax cut, my salary has remained the same, but a single none taxpayer throughout the year has a withholdings rate of 30%. Then, at the end of the year, when I do my taxes and claim single 1, I have an effective tax rate of 27%. So my refund would go down. But I actually paid less in taxes the whole year. Instead of taking home 70,000 gross income, I took, or seven, I'm sorry, 65,000, I took home 70 and then received a refund of 3,000. So my gross income over the entire year was 73,000. As opposed to taking home 65 and getting a $5,000 refund, so my gross income over the year, or net income over the year, was 70,000. With the tax cuts, I made $3,000 more in take-home pay. Now, I understand back in the 80s when Alyssa and the rest of them were filming Who's the Boss, and we were watching Tony Danza as one of the first male housekeepers on primetime television to, I believe, Sybil Shepherd. Not 100% sure, but I believe it was Sybil Shepherd. And all the lovely antics there. She was also being educated because, of course, as a child, she had to take classes. But unfortunately, the tutors that worked there decided that she didn't actually need the full education experience. They gave her just enough to pass the classes. As classes got harder, they continued giving her just enough to pass the classes. And then she graduated, as I say, at the very bottom of her class of 1, which is just sad. Here she was making a lot of money in the 1980s and couldn't even get decent quality tutors to give her a good education. In her defense, or in her benefit, I would guess, she was able to maintain good looks and a good reputation in Hollywood, at least until the late 90s when Charmed finally ended, and now she's apparently reduced to Netflix originals that very few people have actually heard of. She believes that now she is a celebrity. She is uniquely placed to order the country around and tell them that I don't care if you're actually taking home more money. The tax cuts are only for the rich. So if you're making more, you're rich, and you need to pay your fair share. While she is reported to have stiffed workers on a renovation on her home, Reportedly, she is behind on her taxes, and she lives behind a barrier around her home and has armed security. As she tells us, walls are immoral and guns will kill you. Well, I'm not even sorry to say this, Miss Milano. As you and I are contemporaries in age, I believe there's less than 2 years between us. I'm going to tell you to pull your head out of your nether regions. I'm going to tell you to grow up, maturity and mentally wise speaking, and I'm going to tell you to get a better education than you received 30 years ago. I have studied the social sciences for several years to gain a degree in history with a certification to teach secondary social studies. I would love to have a time machine to where I could go back and be your social studies teacher and tutor for your high school years, because I would have taught you how economics actually works. You would not have graduated high school believing that socialism is a wonderful thing, because I would have made it very clear that socialism means I take all of your money and I decide what you get back. I tell you where to live, what mode of transportation you have, which often ends up being your feet. I tell you what job you will have and what pay you will get for that job, and then I will take all of your pay and decide what you get back. Look to the history of the USSR, of Venezuela, of Communist China. Look at current countries. Cuba is still suffering. Look at North Korea, where people are all but starving while their leaders live like royalty. And they tell them that, well, taxes just aren't high enough because we need more money to fix all these roads and everything else. And taxes go up and nothing gets done. I'll end with this, and it's the same thing I've said to Michael Moore, to Oprah, to Rosie, and now to Alyssa, and all the other liberal whining windbags. If you feel that the rich, as you call them, are not paying their fair share, as you are a member of that group, feel free to take this advice. You may always, at any point, for any reason, with or without explanation, send more money than your tax burden tells you to the federal treasury. If you made $20 million last year and you were only taxed $2 million, feel free to send another 4, 5, 8 million to the treasury to pay your fair share. Because after all, as Obama said, you can only make so much money. Right? But I've said enough on this. Let me know what your thoughts are. Just remember, keep the comments civil. We only learn from debate, not from argument. Also, please like and share the video, and remember to subscribe and activate notifications so that you're the first to hear of new content as it is posted. Until next time, everyone, have a wonderful day.